Hi, I'm Lynn Doring, and I'm pleased to have with me today Ryan Bunting. And Ryan and I met probably in 2016 as a result of being part of the Lemoyne Community Center, which is a community center here in Washington that impacts youth in our area. So I've wanted to interview Ryan for quite a while. He has had quite an impact both on the younger levels, and now he's teaching at a college level. He is now an assistant professor at W&J in their education department. So I just want to explore a little bit about what he has done in his past, what he's doing today, and what we can do to help and maybe open up some opportunities for our community to get involved and serve. So Ryan, we met in 2016 as a result of the Lemoyne Community Center. How did you get involved there?
Well, I'll tell you, our former executive director, Ms. Joyce, who we're both very close with, she actually recruited me. I was working at Washington Park Elementary School, teaching 5th grade. I can vividly remember actually being in the middle of my lesson and her and Mrs. Zabrowski, my principal at the time, come down and they're knocking on my door. Mrs. Bunting, I need you to step into the hallway. I said, well, that's beautiful, but I got about 25 kids in here. I need somebody to watch my children while, you want to talk to me about something I have no any knowledge about. So they found somebody because they're both very strong-willed. So they found somebody right away. You come down the hall, you here, watch these children just for about 5 minutes, and we'll be fine in the hallway. So we step out, and this is my first time ever meeting Ms. Joyce. Mrs. Zabrowski said, I think you will want to get in touch with this person. I know you had mentioned you really want to get involved in some different community endeavors. And she's the head of the Lemoyne Community Center. And I said, well, that's awesome. I said, well, she told me a little bit about it, in particular about Camp Challenge, which is a summer camp program that Ms. Joyce offered. At that point, I think they had it for either 1 or 2 years. And she was looking for some people in education to kind of work out some of those logistical details to help expand the camp and to get it to where she had envisioned it being. And so I was honored. I was honored just by the request alone. And that first 5 minutes, she can be very captivating. When she wants something, she sells you very quickly. Ms. Joyce was a great promoter, great saleswoman. And so we had a follow-up meeting, and she told me more details about the camp. And this was in the spring, and so I only had about 2 or 3 months before I think the camp was going to start. So I had quite less than that to make a decision. I had basically a couple of days. So I need you to decide pretty quickly because I want to move forward with this.
Yes.
And so I said, well, since you give me 48 hours, I guess let me really, think about it. This person I just met about 24 hours ago. You give me 48 hours to make a decision about working with you for a program I just know a little bit about. Prayed on it and had a lot of peace about it. And Ms. Joyce was wonderful in that regard. And we worked very diligently to try to map out a plan for the camp. But she made a great first impression.
That's phenomenal. What made you want to get involved in a community event? You had a job, there was no need for you to necessarily get involved, but what was your passion to get involved and to help out? And then what program changes did you see when you were there?
I'll be honest, I feel as though I owed a debt to children, period. My mother and my father, but my mother in particular, was very strong to make sure my brother and I, in her words, didn't get lost to anything street related. And so I had a lot of people along the way that veered me back to the right when I was going to the left. And so I felt as though I owed a debt, which is one of the reasons why I got involved in education in the first place. So to me, it was only an extension of what I was already doing. So I'm teaching, and I was already going to kids' games and stuff like that, and really trying to meet the parents at where they were. So I needed another avenue, really selfishly, to be able to do that even more so on a greater scale. Communication is very important between the teacher and the parent and the child. And so what better way to reach them than at the community center? If they're going to be there, well then I will see them on a regular basis. So that helps everybody when serving a child.
Absolutely. You're also a coach at Wash High, so you've had the privilege, which few do, of having elementary school, certainly younger children through Lemoyne Community Center. Now you're dealing with high school kids, and of course we'll get to the college in a moment, but what did you see and what drew you into that position as well, and what are you seeing in our high schools today?
Well, first shout out to the Prexies and to Coach Fowles. I got to put it out there for them for giving me the opportunity to be able to do that in the first place. I started teaching coaching 9th grade basketball actually as a volunteer. They didn't have any assistant varsity positions at the time, and I was interested in helping with coaching. But luckily, the head coach at the time of 9th grade basketball said he needed some help. I was happy. His name is Ricky Berkeley. He said, "Would you like that?" I said, "Absolutely." So I joined in as a volunteer, got a chance to see the 9th graders and kind of understand what Wash High basketball was even about. At that time, Coach Faust was actually the head coach for a short time, and then he retired and somebody else took over. Eventually, I ended up being the head ninth grade coach. And then they actually dissolved the ninth grade program about a year after that. So I had like 1 year, I guess, to prove myself, and maybe I did a poor job. It was like, oh, you know what, we're going to get dissolve the program. And so I was like, oh, y'all want to dissolve me after I take the head coaching position? What y'all say about my coaching skills? But then he followed up by saying, well, we'd like you to join our varsity staff. I said, well, I must have done a little bit of something.
Nice.
And so I joined the varsity staff, and it's been quite the learning experience to see the kids in 4th and 5th grade where I was teaching them, and then to watch their maturation to 9th grade to 12th grade, and to see them in a different light and how much the majority of them have matured and what they were like in a competitive setting compared to a classroom setting was nice for me because it develops that whole holistic picture of the child. And so I was blessed with the opportunity to be able to see them and to coach them. That only helped my classroom management skills, because even though I no longer taught them in class, they had younger siblings or younger cousins or family members, and one of the first things they say, oh, you know my brother, you coach him, blah blah blah, or you used to teach him, or you knew him from the community center. So I mean, any of those particular pinpoints allowed me to be able to reach that child without, I always say, probably very little potential conflict involved. And so that way they remained in my room and not necessarily at the office, at the principal's office or something else. We was able to dissolve a lot of things, remedy a lot of things early on without any issues. So that was wonderful. So that has been quite the journey, and I'll probably continue to do that for that exact reason. I'm not obviously teaching 5th grade anymore, so I'm a little out of touch of seeing the students when they're younger, with the exception of working at the camp. So I lose touch with them in that regard, but I get a chance to see them as they get older in high school realm and transitioning actually into what I currently do.
Which is phenomenal. I think that probably the balance of expectation along with a foundation of love and encouragement, you're putting some accountability on them, but letting them know it's a safe place to grow. And that's key, because from those young years in through the high school years, there's a lot of formative changes and certainly influences, and if you can be a posture in there, that's phenomenal.
Well, I think they appreciate your time. I think one of the greatest gifts we can give anybody is our time, because that's something that's not promised to us. And so they recognize that you're giving of your time. I mean, it's not anything monetary that you can give them, but if you're there for them and they recognize you're there for them, particularly if you go into their their various athletic events or extracurricular events, and they see you in the stands or see you in the crowd, and they're saying, wow, this person took time out of their schedule to see me for X number of minutes. It goes a long way. The students I've had the pleasure of working with see that as a form of loyalty. They don't need anything else. They appreciate that time and support. And that was encouraging enough at times that you say you want to be there and you showed up. Keeping your word means a lot, and that's another, like you said, that's another skill. That's another thing that you impart upon them. If you say you're going to do something, then do it. Mean it. One thing you do have control over. They don't have control over a lot of things, but one thing they do have control over is their word. And so they learn that lesson early on.
Powerful. You will continue Camp Challenge this year, so give us a little picture of that before we move into what you're currently doing.
Well, I tell you, I'm really excited, Lynn, about this Camp Challenge. I wasn't quite sure if I was going to work it, because I wasn't sure exactly what it was going to look like. And luckily, our interim executive director at the Lemoyne Community Center, shout out Miss Linda Harris, she's been with the program with Miss Joyce for many years, a very integral part of what we do at the Lemoyne Center. She came to me and she said, we would like to do Camp Challenge this summer. I think it's something that Ms. Joyce will want. I think it's something that our community needs. And that part is hard to argue with, because I think it's the truth, especially after what we experienced last year, summer 2020, with it being a virtual component. It was okay, but just wasn't quite the same as it had been in years past. So we're going to start at a regular time. We're going to hold it in 2 4-week sessions. So we'll have 100 campers land the first 4 weeks, 25 in each group, so we have 4 age categories extended from kindergarten through about the age of 16. And we'll have, that'll be 4 weeks, and then we have an additional 4 weeks, we call it session 2, with 100 campers as well. Same premise, 4 groups, 25 in each group. We have about 13 or 14 counselors there working it, about 3 counselors or so per group, with somebody as like a floater as a just in case. And we're excited. I mean, we're in the early stages of planning, but we've sent out advertisements for recruitment for counselors. So anyone who's looking to work with children.
There's an opportunity.
Little plug there, anybody?
Opportunity.
Little Miss Linda Harris, the Lemoyne Community Center. A little opportunity to work with children and to work with them on in a high needed area, but in the sense of high need for anyone, because a lot of students have experienced emotional and mental challenges over the course of this pandemic era. So I know they're looking for this camp as like some form of oxygen, and it'd be oxygen not only for the kids but for anybody that's working it. So it'd be something refreshing. So anyone that's looking for that type of job and type of encouraging opportunity, they should definitely apply. Look forward to it, because we're looking forward to having it with our regular field trips that we normally have, activities you've been a part of, you in the organization have been a part of helping with our older students in particular. Helped us out last year with the virtual camp. So we're excited about our programming opportunities and excited about working with kids in general and just getting them back to being able to run around and be children, period.
That's so important, because they have felt isolated and they felt like their whole world's been turned upside down. So some degree of connection and normalcy, I think, is going to be phenomenal. They're all looking forward to it, and we know there's probably already a waiting list to get in.
Guaranteed. The camp is not until June. It's like the first week in June.
You're full.
You're full. It'll be full.
You might be doing a third session.
It's a possibility.
It's a possibility.
It might extend right before up until the school year starts.
Right.
So
there might be a need for a little bit more in the way of volunteers. So.
Absolutely.
So that brings us to what you're doing now, which is thrilling, and you gave me a little taste of it, but I really want you to talk about it. You've highlighted some things here. You're a moderator and a presenter for several of these discussions. Racial equity, you're dealing with general education, emerging practices in a remote world, because we're all, unfortunately, remote. We're on virtual this and virtual that. You're talking about No Child Left Behind, the dismantling of public education. These are hot topics. When students need to be seen, heard, they're isolated in their homes. Sometimes that's not even a healthy situation for them. So as you're at the college level, what are you seeing, and what are some of these topics? What are you passionate about? And tell us a little bit about the things that you're moderating, questions you're getting, the challenges that you're seeing, and then how maybe as a community we can come to support, to help, to make aware, to bring programs to our area that can be life-changing, life-altering, and community-altering.
Well, I'm connected back to one of the questions you asked earlier that I didn't answer was, what am I seeing in the high schools? Because they pretty much kind of go in the same counter with what we're seeing at the college level in terms of students in this remote setting. And what we're seeing are students who are having emotional health challenges, mental health challenges, are dealing with trauma that might have been a way of escaping from when they were in the actual school building itself. But when they're at their current home or someplace, full time, that's triggering for them in a number of ways. Whether it be the high school level or the collegiate level, I'm seeing the same things from this virtual learning platform. And that's not to say that people's homes are unsafe or unhealthy in any way. What it is to say is that there was a balance there between I'm at home or I'm at school. And when you lose one of those things, you're losing your balance. One thing has to make up for the other. And depending upon what your situation is, it may or may not be a good thing or what's making up for the other. But what we're recognizing is that it's been tough for students, because the same things they were getting at school, they're not necessarily getting at home, and vice versa, which is what also created that balance. So I'm noticing students' balance are shifted. And it's like if you were walking and you have a twisted ankle, they have a limp, and it's difficult to do some of the things that you would naturally do. Same premise. With teaching with children, same premise we're seeing with our high school students and also college students. They're losing their balance. So some of the things we're working on, some of the presentations I've had the opportunity to give have been centered around creating a community in a remote world. Okay. What can we do to help our online learners? And at WJ in particular, we have a hybrid program in which there's some students in person and some students that are joining us for our lessons online. And so we pride ourselves in our education department about creating community. I think we've done a pretty good job of that well before I was even there to do that. And it's been difficult in order to have that same community feeling in this particular setting, type of learning environment. But we came up with some ideas over the summer. Some of those things being a simple check-in question with students about what they're thinking, how they're feeling when they first come into the classroom. So we'll set up a question that everyone can answer. You can either respond in like Zoom and in the chat, or you can have it written down and we'll share it aloud. And using those first 5 to 10 minutes of class to get an idea of where people are mentally and emotionally. Because depending upon where they are or where we are as a class will determine, do we stick with plan A of our lesson, or do we shift to a plan B? Do we need to do something entirely different? So that has helped us a lot. And some other things we'll do in our class is that we'll do a lot of breakout rooms in which students who are online are working with students who are in person. So we'll ask the students who are in person to bring their laptops so they can be in the same breakout room. And that has helped, because the isolation part of it is that, well, I'm not in school anymore, so how am I making friends? Especially if you're online. The ones who are in person, they still kind of interact with some people. But those online, I mean, it's kind of isolated unless you already have an established set of friends. But if you're like a freshman or sophomore in college, it's difficult. And if you're not playing a sport, that's another hurdle that you're facing. So we try to put them in groups together, and we've seen the bonds really strengthen. And we do that frequently. I mean, they'll be in different groups 2 or 3 times within a class period. And then we'll do the same thing, we meet with them again. And then when our students, when they lead lessons in class, that's one of their requirements. You have to make sure everyone is bonding in some shape, form, or fashion, and incorporate that within your instruction. Because within our program, we say the best way to learn how to teach is to teach. So many of our students, all of our students, are also teaching their peers regularly throughout the class, throughout the semester. So they have to incorporate those things. We also do continuous polls. We may ask a question of, how are you feeling today? What emoji describes how you feeling today? Or what you're thinking at this moment? And they'll put down, what you follow up with, well, why? If they feel comfortable answering that question. And many of them do. They just love the idea that somebody's asking, how am I feeling? What am I thinking? Because even before the pandemic, that question wasn't asked enough. So we try to just continuously validate them and validate thoughts and feelings in that sense. And it sounds very simple, but it's so profound in the sense of building community. Because if they feel as though you're invested in them, now they feel more invested in what you have to say as an instructor. So that's been some of the presentations. We've been talking about different ideas, uses of various technology that we use in our class to try to really create that form of community. And my colleague, Dr. Marissa Capuzzi-Schmizi, she does a wonderful job of bringing the technology component there. I know a little bit, she knows a lot. So I can handle the people in person and stuff like that, but she's phenomenal. She's phenomenal with the technology is her thing, and so she's always bringing an idea. I just saw this, I just saw that. She'll say, I went down the rabbit hole of researching these different technology projects. I'm gonna say, well, come out the rabbit hole so we can talk about these things. So she'll come up and she'll have these different ideas, and we'll discuss them. And if it fits our instruction for that day, we'll use it. And we've used a number of them. We use a number of them in our presentations about how to create community. So that's been beautiful. That's been a wonderful thing to talk with other educators about how can we create community in this hybrid setting that we have, this pandemic of instruction. So we did a few conferences like that, which was nice, and to meet people from all over the country.
I was going to say, those were opened up to other people. So tell me how that worked. How did you start to partner with other places or other colleges? Well,
I'll tell you, it's through this organization called AACU, American Association of American Colleges and Universities. We submitted a proposal. We felt the need was there, and we also wanted to have the opportunity to present, not only to present, but also to hear from other people. We talk about, is there a win-win there? Yeah, we could talk about our ideas. We think that they're effective, and other people may find them effective, but we also want to know, let me get your idea here. Let me take this and let me borrow that for our instruction, because we all are in this pandemic together, so let's really find out what we can do. And so the AACU they accepted our proposal, both proposals, and we got a chance to present. And a number of people from all over the country. We had about 40 participants the first time and 60-something the second time. So that was nice to hear from a wide range of people about what their thoughts and their feelings were behind creating community in a remote world. So that's been a great opportunity. WJ has specifically asked Marissa and I to do a couple of presentations, which was nice. At our symposium on democracy, we talked about the dismantling, virtually No Child Left Behind, the dismantling of public education, in which we talked about the need for community following this pandemic.
Yes.
What are we going to do in order to meet those needs that I was talking about earlier, those emotional needs, those mental needs of the student, of course the physical needs, making sure they're fed and stuff, that's important, but how are we going to deal with the emotional and mental challenges? And so we talked about how various school districts receive various funding depending upon what tax bracket they're in. And what can they do with those resources and that funding that's available to them in order to help meet those needs. And some school districts are going to have more of a challenge than others of doing that. But if we're doing some of the small things that we talked about in our presentation, like just checking in, using the first 5 minutes to really check in with your students, validating them, mixing up your groups within your instructional groups. Whether you have all the money in the world or no money at all, you're still able to validate students, and they still will feel like you care about them and they belong where they are. And then the other things you have to worry about with the resources, you'll find your way to do the best you can. But it has to start with really validating them and bringing them there. And the rest we found a way to figure out, because there's so many smart people in education and so many people are very adaptive that you find a way to meet your needs of the students. But if we validate them first, then we'll be fine. One of the things I hope that we can continue talking about is what we do with our students, increasing their empathetic intelligence. So we talk about different ways in which students learn, but we rarely talk about increasing our students' empathetic intelligence and how that connects to creating community. You know, we don't have to agree with everything somebody's saying. Everything is not specifically about race, but of course about gender, sexual orientation, the whole nine. So increasing the empathetic intelligence covers that gamut of things without you having to be directly similar to that person. So that's one thing that we also incorporated with those presentations. They seem to like it. It became a catchphrase. So we were patting ourselves on the back. I said, "Oh shoot, this empathetic intelligence thing, is really kind of taking off. We appreciate y'all, catching that on."
That's powerful.
And that was nice. So that part's been nice. And that's the transition for any K-12 education or collegiate education. With everything that transpired with the George Floyd case, etc., BLM movement, people were really thinking about how can we talk about social justice issues. Well, it's more than race when we talk about social justice issues. That's why we frame it around empathetic intelligence, because that helps everybody.
Yes.
And that's what we want to do. We want to be able to make sure everybody feels like they have a plate at the table. It's important as a black man for me to talk about race, but that's only one element. We need to be able to talk about everything as much as we can, because I'm going to also talk about somebody else down the hallway that may not relate to me directly as African American male, but I need to understand their sexual orientation or the gender biases that they go through potentially on a daily basis. I need to have an understanding of that, so our students are being exposed to that. In terms of like what people can do to help, these conversations are a wonderful start, because not a lot of people know about these things, which is one of the reasons why we decided to do these various presentations. The exposure of it, so more people are talking about it, at least begin the conversation. But things like you all have done in the past about coming and helping at the Lemoyne Center, those things are tremendous, because those students, you all expose those students to a different element of life that they haven't had the experience with. Maybe we don't have the expertise to share with them. And it helps them to navigate a plan as to what I'm going to do after I get out of K-12 education. What can I do next? My options aren't as limited as I thought. Many of our students you've seen at the center is what landed, they think I'm hit the option A, option B, do we move to work, or I'm going to go to college. If I can't go to college, then I'm automatically going to go to work or whatever that looks like. Well, yeah, you mentioned to me, like, there's trade schools. There's the different avenues depending upon what your situation is, and you all help them to navigate that situation. I think a continuance of those conversations, even beyond the summer, if we can all come together and create a way of doing that continuous dialogue, I think will help. By the time they become juniors and seniors in high school, they have a plan.
That's powerful.
They have a plan of action.
That's powerful. The empathetic part, of course, we've all been instructed in business to have emotional intelligence. So it's very much the same. Yeah. You're connecting with people on a level that's beyond the black and white necessarily. Here's your job description. Here is what we expect at school. Here's what we expect you're treating them as a person. You're valuing them as a human with thoughts, feelings, and they are going to be different. There's going to be people that have come out of different situations, that have different challenges, that have different opinions. But part of our healing process is to have these conversations, is to have these dialogues, and to be open to have, more emotional or empathetic. I love that word more so than the emotional, because emotional can tend to be, you think it's more inflammatory.
Yeah.
But empathetic is, I really want to see the way you see that. I really want to feel the way you feel that. So you're giving them a safe place. And what a powerful thing for educators, especially, who came into education during probably the most unusual time. Okay, now you can't see your students. They're going to be on a screen, and that's where you're going to sit for most of your classroom time. And then students who are used to interacting, and we all know how it was through school. As you said, you're roasting somebody, you're having a joke, you're doing this, and you're not doing that when you're on a screen and you're muted or whatever. So to have that, I think that's so powerful and so beautiful, and I'm so thankful that you're in our community, and I'm so thankful you're continuing to give back. I've always said, even here at my company, it's never been us four and no more. It's not that you continue to grow so you can have, more stuff. It's you grow so you can have more impact. So you can take the skills, the knowledge, the connections. So I'd like to continue to partner with you in whatever venue you are to say, let us be a mentor program, or if you have someone that needs a connection and I happen to know somebody in that field, let me make those connections. Let me see if there's internships available for that person, because I have connections that you don't. You have connections that I don't. Working together on those pieces, and again, like you said, college is amazing if you can afford it and if that opportunity is there. But there are some that won't be able to, and there are trades. What I am in insurance is considered a trade. You have 40 hours of classroom and you can get a license and do this for a living. So there are other options. I'm not a welder or an electrician or a plumber, but those are out there as well. Very viable trades where you can have a very good career. So any closing thoughts that you would like to share?
Well, thank you for your time for today, and I'm looking forward to future conversations like the ones we're having now, and future partnerships to be able to maybe expand this. And as you said, the connections you have, the ones I have, and others maybe we will happen to run across in the future, to be able to really expand, beyond the pandemic. That don't allow us to define where we are, but maybe just as a step stool to where we're trying to get to.
Well, thank you for joining us for this edition, our first edition. We would like to continue to do these, but if you have something that pricked your heart as you watched today, whether it's getting involved in a volunteer setting or through the community center, maybe as a college professor yourself, you have some connections that you'd like to connect with Ryan on a level that might be, let's do some of these facilitating educational pieces. Please contact us. We'd be happy to share the information. And as always, let us help you have an impact in your community.